Let's jump straight into this 2026 exploration by Adele Yarn because it completely flips the script on what we think we know about personal liberation. We live in this culture that is just obsessed with self improvement, right? Optimizing every second of our routines, finding our own private zen. But in this explainer, we're going to look at the unexpected and honestly pretty radical intersections between modern psychotherapy and ancient spiritual practice. So I want you to ask yourself a question right now, because the answer might entirely shift how you see your own mind and your place in the world. What does it actually mean to be free? Seriously, when you picture freedom in your head, what do you see? Is it escaping to a quiet cabin in the woods? Ultimate financial independence? Just not having to answer to anybody else ever again? It's fascinating because we usually imagine freedom as this complete isolation, independence, the ability to just stand apart and live without constraints. But Yoron, pulling from decades of clinical and contemplative experience, argues that true liberation is actually found in deep, unavoidable interconnectedness. It's about being fully awake to the present moment, not as some isolated island, but totally integrated within yourself and intensely alive to how you connect with everyone else. Section 1. Rethinking what freedom means, a journey of surrender. To really grasp this profound shift, we need to trace Yarn's own journey, going from this stubborn sense of independence to radical surrender. So picture this. It's 1998. A 32-year-old Yarn finds herself at a 10-day Vipassana meditation retreat in northern India, and she had no idea what she'd signed up for. 10 hours of silent meditation a day. At first, she's literally marking the days off on her bedpost like a prisoner. But around day 4, she made a pivotal choice. She threw away her watch, she flushed the snack she'd smuggled in straight down the toilet, and she just surrendered. And there, for the very first time, she felt a genuine sense of spaciousness. She spent the next few years retreat hopping until she stumbled upon a flyer in Bodh Gaya for a Buddhist-informed psychotherapy training over in the UK. Section 2. The illusion of the self. Moving beyond the thinking mind. Now, let's see how moving from a physical retreat in India takes us into the deep psychological terrain of our own identity. Western culture basically drills it into us that our thinking mind is our concrete, fixed identity. I mean, we're raised on Descartes, right? I think, therefore I am. We put intellect on a pedestal. We just assume that because the voice in our head keeps saying I, there must be this stable, permanent I sitting in there. But when you really observe it, like you do on a meditation cushion, you realize thoughts just pop up and vanish. Buddhist philosophy views the self not as a fixed object, but as shunyata, or emptiness. And actually, scratch that. Emptiness doesn't mean nothingness. It just means the self is this highly dynamic, constantly shifting constellation of mental, emotional, and physical states. And this brilliantly illustrates how mindfulness-based core process psychotherapy takes ancient Buddhist insights, specifically the Four Noble Truths, and aims them right at modern psychological pain. The reality that suffering is a given, that it stems from us desperately clinging to what we want and pushing away what we don't, that we can actually stop this cycle, and that present moment awareness is the path to doing it. The goal in the therapy room isn't to build a tougher, more defended ego. It's to learn how to meet whatever you're feeling right now with intense curiosity. Imagine if instead of fighting your daily anxieties, you just greeted them with compassion. It's a game changer. Section 3. Shaped by our relationships, the therapy connection. But here's the catch, and Yarn realized this pretty quickly. Sitting peacefully on a cushion is one thing. It is incredibly easy to feel free when you're in total undisturbed silence. True freedom has to survive the messy, chaotic, totally unpredictable reality of human relationships. That brings us to object relations theory. This is the psychoanalytic idea that from infancy onward, our very sense of self is forged through our caregivers. We internalize those early relationships, and they become these invisible templates that filter every single interaction we have for the rest of our lives. We don't just meet people as they are, we meet them through the layered history of our own past. We aren't isolated machines. Our identities are continuously built and shaped by the people around us. I absolutely love this quote from Jack Engler because it keeps this whole philosophy incredibly grounded. You have to be somebody before you can be nobody. Realizing that we're interconnected and our self is fluid doesn't give us a free pass to ignore our actual psychological pain. The self might be a process, sure, but the pain it feels is very real. You still have to do the heavy lifting of psychological integration, understanding your wounds, making the unconscious conscious. You cannot just meditate your trauma away. Section 4. Presence over fixing, a new therapeutic attitude. If we embrace the idea that we're these interconnected, constantly changing works in progress, the whole point of going to therapy has to completely shift. It's no longer about a mechanic fixing a broken part. For Yaron, therapy is fundamentally an attitude of mind. It's replacing that desperate urge to control or cure with radical curiosity. True healing happens when two people, the therapist and the client, just sit with what is actually there. The psychoanalyst Wilfred Bion famously instructed therapists to work without memory or desire. When we stop trying to prematurely explain or fix the pain, we create this massive open space where real emotional metabolization can finally happen. Section 5. The Self-Optimization Trap, the Near Enemy. Okay, let's look at a darker reality here, because modern wellness culture has tragically co-opted some of these beautiful ideas. This quote from Thanissara hits the nail on the head. We have confused feeling good with doing good. Yaron points out how modern spiritual communities have become amazing at processing their personal emotions, but absolutely pathological when it comes to taking real moral accountability. We can hold space for literally anything, it seems, except actual responsibility for our actions. And this is the real danger of dropping ancient spiritual practices into a hyper-individualistic neoliberal society. Our culture has this sneaky way of taking massive, crushing structural problems and reframing them as mere personal challenges. The conversation shifts from, hey, what toxic conditions are producing this societal distress, to, how can I individually manage myself better within it? Are we just using mindfulness as a selfish tool to cope with a broken system instead of trying to actually fix the system? When society tells you to just meditate to cope with a toxic world, it strips away our collective responsibility to change that world. Inner peace just becomes a well-managed apathy. Section 6. True freedom is collective. We are not islands. Which brings us to the ultimate paradigm shift of this explainer. You cannot achieve total liberation if your neighbor remains in chains. Yaron leans heavily on the beautiful concept of inner being, coined by the Vietnamese monk Thich Nhat Hanh. It's the profound realization that everything exists in a state of interwoven dependency. This proves that psychological freedom isn't some private trophy you win. It is, at its core, a shared collective experience. Think about it using this brilliant analogy. Just like a forest, we might look like separate autonomous individuals on the surface. We walk around in our own bodies, we have our own names. But underneath the soil, if you look at the complex fungal networks that trade nutrients and information, the forest is actually one massive single entity. We are entirely sustained by the exact same connected root system of humanity. Because of this, any true therapy must acknowledge the social and historical forces that wound us in the first place. Drawing on thinkers like Frantz Fanon and Ignacia Martín-Baró, liberation psychology argues that your individual healing is entirely inseparable from social transformation. If a client comes in raging about societal injustice, you can't just treat that as an individual pathology. It is a collective wound showing up in an individual psyche. And this echoes the Buddhist concept of dependent origination, the insight that literally nothing exists independently. We are products of our conditions. That means our personal suffering is inherently tied to the suffering of the broader systems we participate in. Awakening isn't just a private, solo achievement. It is a deeply relational and ethical orientation to the entire world. So as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with this incredible provocation from Aisha Shahida Simmons to ponder. How can inner liberation support a more grounded, compassionate engagement with the world? If freedom isn't just about escaping your own stress, but about becoming present enough to actually show up for each other, how does that change the way you're going to move through your life today? Something to think about. Thanks for exploring this with me.